Holly Maynard is live at Pittsford Plaza Cinemas this morning. And Holly, earlier on in our broadcast, we talked about the new movie, The Alphabet Killer, based on some murders that happened here in our community. Those were called the double initial murders, right?
Yeah, that's how we refer to them, and I think police in the area refer to them. And if you've lived in Rochester for a while, or perhaps even if you're new to the Rochester area, you may have heard of this case because it has still not been solved. We're talking about the double initial murders back from the 70s, so more than 30 years ago, almost 40 years ago, still an unsolved case. If you're not familiar with the case, basically 3 young girls were murdered, and they call it the double initial murders because of their names. Carmen Colon was one of the victims, both a C in her first and last name, and her body was found in Chili. The killer allegedly, or did, put these young victims in a town with a first initial that corresponded to the initials of their first and last names too. So now there's a movie out loosely based on these murders. Take a look at some of the video we have from one of the clips. This is with Eliza Dushku, and she is the main star of the movie. Basically, Norma, this morning we're going to be with some of the stars of the movie. We're going to be with one of the producers and the writers. They shot this movie in the Rochester area, and now you too can see it, again, based on this local case, Norma.
All right, interesting. Takes a lot of people back to those days. I remember hearing about it as a kid. My mother and father talking about it. They remember the case, so we'll look forward to hearing more from you later on. We've got much more news straight ahead. Your top stories of the day coming up.
About the double initial murders that happened here, loosely based on those, called Alphabet Killer. And Holly's with some of the people who were involved in making the film.
Yeah, Doug, I'm sure you remember covering it. I know you weren't working when the murders actually happened back in the early 70s, but it is still an open case. So we've done a number of stories on the double initial murders over the years. And now there's a movie coming out, a movie that was actually shot here in Rochester and premiered last night. And now you can see it where we are this morning at the Pittsford Cinemas. If you're not familiar with the case, 3 young girls were found dead, and it was called the double initial murders because their first and last names, as well as the town where they were found, all had the same initials. So you had Carmen Colon in Chili, Wanda Wolkowitz in Webster, and Michelle Mayenza in Macedon. And right now we've got the 3 young ladies who play those victims actually in the movies. Why don't you introduce yourselves and tell us who you play in the movie, and they're slightly different names than the names that I just mentioned.
I'm Eva Mansorella, and I played Melissa Maestro.
I'm Christina Jewell, and I played Wendy Walsh.
I'm Bailey Garno, and I played Carla Castillo.
And you're all from the Rochester area. Yes. What was it like for you to be a part of this movie that was based loosely on something locally, a big local case?
Well, it was an amazing experience to act in this, and the actors were amazing. The crew was amazing. Everybody, it was just such a great experience.
Also, we have some video from the movie, one of the clips, and this one shows Eliza Dushku, who is one of the main characters, the main character. She's an investigator who we'll tell you about a little bit later on in the broadcast. But as we show some of that video, why don't you tell me what it was like for you to be a part of the movie, too?
Well, it was my first movie, and it just was such a great experience. I wouldn't have traded it for anything. To be able to work with everyone that was in it and to really get that feel of what it was like to make a film and to be a part of the whole production was just it leaves me speechless.
We were talking about some big names. Tell us about some of the big names that are in this movie.
Carrie Elwes, like you said, Eliza Dushku. They were great people. They were on set helping us the whole time, and it was so exciting to meet those kind of people. You only see them on the big screen, but to actually work with them, it was totally great experience.
All right. And we'll talk more with them coming up later on this morning. And of course, Doug and Norma, the hope by a lot of people is that perhaps this movie can help drum up a little bit more interest in this case that still has not been solved more than 30 years later.
All right, thanks, Hal. We'll be back to you in just a little bit, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the big plans today for the president-elect.
That's right. Our top stories are straight ahead.
Holly Maynard's out at Pittsford Plaza Cinema this morning talking about the new film that's going to premiere there tonight.
Yeah, it's premiering tonight. Last night there was a special screening. It's called The Alphabet Killer, and a lot of people know the case that it's loosely based on. It's the double initial murders from the 1970s, right here in the Rochester area. 3 little girls were killed. Their first names, their last names, and the towns where they were found all began with the same initial. And so this morning we're talking with some of the people who are behind the movie. This is Tom Malloy. He's one of the writers. You're a co-star, one of the producers as well.
Yes. Yeah.
How did this whole idea get started for you to base a movie on these murders from Rochester? And let's show some of the video, too, because they were here shooting in Rochester, and we've got some video of that to show you.
Well, my wife's born and raised in Rochester, and her family still lives up here. And I had just completed another film, and I said, I wanted to write another scary movie. And she said, well, there's this unsolved murder case in Rochester. And so right away, I started trying to find some information on it, and thought, man, there's a great movie here. It's a really exciting case. And I was always a fan of true crime stories like Zodiac and The Black Dahlia and all that stuff. So I said, here's another one.
Rob Schmidt is the director of this film. We also have some other video to show you. This one is from the film, a clip of the film with Timothy Hutton, one of the stars. You also have a couple of other big names in this piece, too, in this film as well, don't you, Rob?
Yeah, Timothy Hutton, Eliza Dushku, Carrie Elways, Michael Ironside. There's a lot of really great people in the movie.
Now, take a look at the clip that we're
Melissa
showing
Leo,
there.
I wanted to say really quick, Melissa Leo, who I think is going to be nominated this year. So.
Oh, okay. What's going on here? I don't know if you can see the screen over there about this clip with Timothy Hutton. Tell us a little bit about his character.
This is the beginning of the third act. Timothy Hutton is, there's a sort of peer counseling group at a mental hospital, and he's the lead patient, and he's talking with his friend Eliza Dushku.
Okay. Coming up in the next half hour, Doug and Norma, we're going to talk to you about this local case and where it stands today more than 30 years later. Actually, some of the people that have worked here on the film are getting leads from the public. So it's an interesting side to this story. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Holly.
We'll be right back. Holly Maynard is at Pittsford Plaza Cinemas this morning.
That's right. She's talking all about the Alphabet Killer based on Rochester's double initial murders.
Because now the Alphabet Killer, which is the movie loosely based on those murders, is here at the Pittsford Cinemas, and then it's going to open up in New York and LA after that. Take a look at some of the file footage we have from these cases, because if you've lived in Rochester for a while, you know these names: Carmen Colon, Wanda Walkowitz, and the third one, Michelle Mayenza. 3 little girls who the initials of their first and last names were the same, and so were in terms of the towns where their bodies were found. They also started with the same initial too. So that's why these murders in the Rochester area were called the double initial murders. Well, they happened in the early 1970s. So now, more than 30 years later, almost 40 years later, the killer still has not been found. And now there's this movie out. It's called The Alphabet Killer. It was shot here in Rochester, and you can see it now here. We've got 3 of the ladies who portrayed who played the 3 victims who you just saw there on the screen. Tell us your names.
I'm Eva Mansarella.
I'm Christina Jewell.
Bailey Garno.
And what was it like for you guys playing these characters, knowing, the way that they died and how their killer still has not been found?
This was a tragic story, and I hope that this movie leads to more investigation about this. I really hope that this can be solved, because these 3 innocent young girls were killed, and I really hope that it can be solved, because it's sad.
You're all from the Rochester area, too. What was it like shooting this movie right in your hometown?
Well, I hadn't heard of the double initial murders until I auditioned for this movie. And once I found out about it, it was so scary, because I was just like, what if I were back then? How would I have acted if I had the double initials? But like Eva said, I really hope that this brings more investigation and that the killer is caught, so that there can be peace of mind to the families and friends.
And for you, what was it like?
It was a lot of fun filming it in my hometown, seeing places that I live in getting shot in the movie, and now watching it on the screen and recognizing those buildings. It was a good experience. I liked having the cast and crew come over here into Rochester and see our town, and it was a great time.
Greg Policini is the executive producer of the show. You were telling me earlier, the movie, you were telling me earlier that actually people have now come forward to you with possible leads in this case?
Absolutely. Being a native of Rochester and living in Rochester, they're seeking me out as a contact to talk about people that they know about or have seen or heard stories throughout the years of people that might be a possible informant or have had a possible lead into the film, or not the film, but into the case after watching film coverage and us doing this whole thing. It's just been amazing the amount of emails and calls that I've been getting about it.
Yeah, and I know you've worked with police a lot as well to help them.
Yeah, with my foundation, we've done a lot of work there, so it's been great.
We'll have more on CW16, including more talk about some of the names in this film. You've got Timothy Hutton there. You've got Carrie Elways. Some big names here, Doug and Norma.
All right, thanks, Hal. I can remember being a child in Monica B. Leary School in Rush, and we all got called into an assembly to watch a movie called The Child Molester. And then you had to have a special parental permission slip. to see the end of the film, which showed some of the scenes where the 3 girls' bodies were found. You had to have parental permission to stay for
Wow.
the end of the movie, and that's how big a deal it was.
Oh,
and
my
you talk
goodness.
about
Yeah.
the whole community living in fear over this thing. It was a very big deal.
That's incredible.
We're growing up with that. All right, coming up, we got some medical news, and we'll get your top stories of the day, too. Stay with us.
Watching 13 Wham News this morning on Rochester's CW with Doug Embledge, Norma Holland, Holly Maynard, Evan Dawson, and meteorologist Marty Snyder. 13 Wham News, your breaking news and weather authority.
We're going to go back out to Holly Maynard now. She is premiering, or I'm sorry, part of the premiere of this new movie, The Alphabet Killer, which ties back to a time in Rochester's history that a lot of people have bad memories about.
Yeah, unfortunately, because that case is still unsolved. Investigators still working on that case today. I spoke with police earlier this week, and they said just 3 days ago they got another lead about this case that is almost 40 years old now, about 35 years old or so. We're talking about the double initial murders here in the Rochester area because back about 35 years ago or so, 3 young girls were killed, and they all, the girls would have the same initial in their first and last name, and also the town in which they were found. And so some producers out there thought, hey, let's make a movie that is loosely based on this. Greg Policini is actually the executive producer. Talk to us about the plot first, because I say loosely based because really it is loosely based to be accurate.
Correct. There's a a lot of the film is based on true facts, but we did add a lot of fiction. I think our director Rob would probably be better at describing how he best chose to go about that.
Yeah. Okay, Rob, let's talk about that. We've got Eliza Dushku, who is one of the main characters, and who does she play in this movie?
Eliza plays Megan, who was the lead investigator on the first, on the first portion of the case. And we have Carrie Elways, who's another investigator in the Rochester Police Department.
Yeah, I think we actually have some video of Carrie in this movie. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Tim Hutton and Tom Noonan, Michael Ironsides, Bill Mosley, a lot of really terrific actors.
How were you able to get those big names for this film?
Well, the story's an interesting story, and the script was it's a fun script to read. I mean, it's a disturbing series of events, but it's a good read. And a number of them are friends of mine from previous films, Wrong Turn and Crime and Punishment, Suburbia, some of the stuff I've done in the last few years.
And Greg, because you're from the Rochester area, what was it like to have these stars shooting here in the Rochester area, and what did they think of this area?
They thought it was outstanding. I talked to them quite a bit because I was on the set almost every day, and they actually thought, including Michael Ironside and Timothy Hutton, both said that they thought that Rochester could be a hub for major filmmaking.
Really? Why?
Yeah. Because of the difference in locations between, you got lakes, you got Finger Lakes, you got countryside, you got Genesee Rivers, High Falls. They just thought it was outstanding. And the downtown they thought was very quaint, and they really enjoyed it.
I heard from police and also in Jack Garner's review this morning in the paper that the families of the victims weren't thrilled when they heard that a movie was going to be loosely based on the murders. But you had a point that you made in Jack Garner's article.
Correct. I understand where they're coming from, and we're very sympathetic about, them as families. But if it brings awareness to the case and somehow brings some justice to them, I think that is such a win-win situation.
Yeah, you said people have already been contacting you while you guys were shooting here, and now that the movie is out, thinking they may have a possible lead.
And I also think that it's also going to bring awareness for, like, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and parents about abducted children. And so I think all across, America, I think it's the best way to go.
Okay, so it premieres here in Rochester, and then, Rob, what happens after that?
Next Friday opens in Los Angeles, and the following Friday in New York. So,
and then you wait and see what the response is in those 2 cities to see what will happen after that?
It's a platform release, which means that it'll expand as audiences find it in the cities. And then in January, there'll be the DVD release. And that'll be nationwide.
Okay. Thanks for joining us this morning. They were up late last night because there was a special showing here at the theater, and then, you always have those after parties afterwards. So this was quite an early morning for them, and then the big premiere tonight, too. Back to you guys.
Sounds good. Thanks, Holly. Yeah, like you said, kind of a sad story, but
Very, very much a sad story.
hopefully they'll get those leads in the case.
We'll be right back.
Well, it has been almost 2 years since some very bright Hollywood stars came to Rochester to shoot a movie called The Alphabet Killer. This morning, we're thrilled to be joined by the star of the film.
Eliza Dushku is on the phone with us to talk about the movie that's based on the double initial murders from 30 years ago. Actually, more than 30 years ago now. Good morning, Eliza.
Hey guys, good morning. How are ya?
We're fine, thanks. You know, I spent the morning with some of your co-stars out there, the three young girls who played the victims. They were with us.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, as well as the director and the writer and the executive producer of the film, too. And they all had wonderful things to say about you. I want to also read you a little bit of the review that came out in the Rochester paper this morning by a guy named Jack Garner. He's the theater critic in our area, very well respected around here. And he says, "The appealing Dushku contributes a strong performance." So congratulations to you, because he isn't always nice.
Wow, well I'll take that compliment, and I appreciate it. That's really nice to hear.
And the young girls wanted you to say hello to Eliza, right?
Yes,
they're so starstruck by her.
They apparently Eliza had given them necklaces, and they were all wearing their necklaces this morning, and they wanted me to say hello to you and that they missed you.
Oh, hello to my homegirls. They were so sweet and so good and so patient, man. They were just, you know, we were in cold times over there. It's cold over there.
And you were shooting in the winter time, right?
Yeah, they were here in December, January. We got a reputation for being cold. And you know what? You've also been patient for a couple of years as the executive producers and the folks in charge kind of gone through the process on where the film's going to go. What has that process been like for you, Eliza?
Well, it's sort of the look. It's sort of the look with, you know, a lot of independent films and even with huge studio films. It's a matter of just sort of finding the right, speaking of climate, you know, feeling the right climate in the business and sort of what's going on. And we really wanted to kind of get with the right distribution company, and you know, there are a lot of politics behind it, but it's been, you know, I've been excited for it to come out. I'm excited for friends and family, and you get a lot of family asking you, like, when's that movie coming out? But I think it's, you know, been worth the wait, and I'm really excited that you know, especially that it's going out there and that it'll come out here in LA, and because I know that there are a lot of people who are anxious to see it.
Well, we're looking at some of the clips actually from the movie right now. It is such a dark and scary movie, very intense, and a lot of it because of the actual, you know, the events behind it, which many people in the Rochester area know so well, you know, 35, 40 years ago with those murders. What was it like for you to deal or to play such a part that has to deal with these really dark roles and storylines?
I'll be honest with you, it was sort of a dark shoot in a lot of ways. We had and I again applaud a really patient and persistent crew that we had, because it was not always, you know, Eliza coming in chipper and sort of, you know, I had to at times be in a dark place, and I've never really played a character like that, but clearly the deterioration of this woman and the magnitude of the grief and the kind of horror surrounding the case and the story just drove this woman over the edge, and it was a really deep role, no doubt.
Yeah, in case people did not see our live shots from earlier on this morning, remind everybody about just who your character is and how she gets involved in this case.
Well, my character was also based on a real woman who but reopened the case. You know, the real murders were in the 70s, and there was a woman who reopened the case in the 80s, and as I understand, she was a member of the Rochester Police Department, and it's sort of her story. She actually developed some sort of mental illness comparable to adult onset schizophrenia during the investigation of the attempt, during the investigation, because of the intensity and kind of horror of things and her own, you know, chemical imbalance. And so I met this woman, and you know, she sort of described that downfall in that time, and it was just fascinating to me. You know, she's a really strong woman, and it was just, and she had very strong ideas about who the actual alphabet killer, or you know, there are a lot of names and just different things people called him, and just the fact that he was never caught. I mean, the whole thing was just really haunting and really chilling to me, and so I really, you know, I was really fascinated by it.
And let's wrap up with this, Eliza. A lot of people were so excited to see yourself, Carrie Elwes, Michael Ironside, Timothy Hutton, big names that they know. And, you know, Rochester is not Hollywood. We're never going to be Hollywood, and that's fine. But, you know, this is a town that would love to attract more projects like this. What was it like working here? And is this the kind of thing where you left going, boy, am I glad to be out of Rochester? Or you think, you know, that was pleasant enough?
No, I gotta say, I had a great time in Rochester, and we were welcomed, and Rochester was very, very good to us. And I think during one of the scenes, we actually had a, you know, just an average, everyday set fire where one of our trucks knocked down a power line in this cute little city nearby that we were shooting in, and the power line set a car on fire, and it was, you know, like pandemonium, and it was like this big, you know, Hollywood company comes in and sets building and car on fire. we felt really bad about that, but thank everyone for, you know, their patience and understanding, and you know, we just appreciated all the people's support, and we couldn't have made this movie without the support of a lot of folks in Rochester, and we, you know, we really love that. So,
well, thanks for your time this morning, and good luck with this movie.
Friends, hello to my little girls. I adored them, and thank you guys. I hope you guys get a chance to see the film and enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Eliza.
We will do so. That's Eliza Dushku, the star of the film, just one of the stars from Hollywood that you will definitely recognize.
You can see it at Pittsford Cinemas. And in case you aren't familiar with what those double initial murders were, or you don't remember, perhaps you're new to the Rochester area, it was from 1971 to 73, I believe, 3 young girls, all whose initial in their first name and the beginning of their last name were the same initial. For example, Carmen Cologne, and their bodies were all found in a town that began with the same initial. For example, Carmen was found in Churchville. So that's the background of the case, and it's still an open case. Although I talked to police earlier this week, they still get leads to this day.
And probably
They're
will
still
continue
working
to do
on
so,
it.
especially with this kind of publicity.
Yeah, so many agencies involved still in the case, and they talk to each other every month about it.
And she mentioned Jack Garner's review. It's in the Democrat and Chronicle today, right there, and he gives it a 6 out of 10. You can read the full review there. And
yeah, he may give one part a 6 out of 10. You have to read it to actually see. I don't know if he gave the whole movie overall a 6 out of 10.
I see. Okay.
You got to really read it.
I'll read it now. We'll go to break. We'll come right back. Stay with us.